So it's not just the technology that you're using. Obviously, that is important as a technology provider. I have to say that. But it's beyond that, above and beyond technology.
Hello and welcome to episode 39 of Rockstar CMO FM. The M is for marketing, the F is for, well, you decide. As you're probably wondering, does the world need another effing marketing podcast? I'm your host, Ian Truscott, founding editor of Rockstar CMO, your monthly hit of marketing street knowledge, where we share straight-talking marketing advice from our community of marketing writers and CMOs. And this weekly podcast serves as my excuse to chat to that band. You can find us at rockstarcmo.com and at Rockstar CMO on Facebook, LinkedIn and Twitter. This episode was recorded on Friday the 4th of December. Thank you for joining us. I hope you've had a good week, that you are well, keeping safe and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. On the set list this week, I chat to Christine Bailey, CMO of Valita, as we continue to delve into the pages of her book. I chat to the co-founder and CEO of content marketing planning tool, Planary, Xenia Muntean, and I again round off my week in the Rockstar CMO virtual bar with my friend and content marketing guru, Robert Rose. Right, let's get started, shall we? Before I start, if you indulge me for a moment, just wanted to share we have just published the latest issue of Rockstar CMO that is full of holiday thanks and gifts. It's called the Come Together issue, named after the classic Beatles track. It's a great collection from 8 of our marketing writers and CMOs that you can find at rockstarcmo.com and click on the latest issue link. Right, let's get back to the set list. If you're a regular listener, you will know that last week we started a short series diving into Christine Bailey's first book, Customer Insight Strategies, How to Understand Your Audience and Create Remarkable Marketing. If you missed last week's episode and you're not familiar with Christine, she is the CMO of Valita, an international payment solution. Christine is a regular contributor to our Rockstar CMO community, sharing her wonderful B2B marketing experience gained at big B2B brands like Hewlett-Packard and Cisco Systems, and is an award-winning marketing professional, having been voted number 1 woman in tech by B2B Marketing, and has a doctorate DBA in customer insights from the Cranfield School of Management here in the UK. Christine recently added author to her list of achievements, and her book that we're discussing in the second part of our 4-part interview was published last month by Kogan Page. Last week, we covered the topic of the book and what inspired Christine to write it. This week, we dive into the meat and talk about insights in planning. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Welcome back, Christine, to Rockstar CMO FM. We're dipping into your book a couple of chapters at a time over the next few weeks. And welcome.
Thank you.
This week, we're going to talk about insights in planning. I'm sort of dipping into chapters 3 to 5 in your book, and you talk about how you can help with planning from brand purpose to creating segments, personas. And in chapter 3, you talk about starting with why. And that's always my favorite. And I think I've talked about that a few times on this actual podcast. Tell us about starting with why.
So most businesses are good at describing what they do and how they do it, but few are good at describing why they do it. And, your why is your purpose and should be at the center of your value proposition. When I first joined Valitor, we said, we're on a mission to become an international payment solutions company. And I said, well, we already are an international payment solutions company. That can't be our purpose. Yeah. So actually we did a strategic insight study to really understand what was important to our customers and what we could, really stand behind. And we came up with Valitor makes buying and selling easy, because it turns out that nobody cares about payments, but they do care about buying and selling, and it should be as easy, transparent, simple as possible. So that became our mantra, that and everybody could, the employees actually could really get behind that as well as our customers. So that's why most businesses don't have a clear purpose-driven value proposition, because it's actually a very hard thing to find out. So we used insights to help us find our why. But I would say don't dive into research with an open-ended question. You've got to have an idea of what it is you're testing for, and you need to go into your research with a point of view that you want validating. So don't just go in completely open-ended.
Yeah.
And I would recommend people, if they need inspiration, try watching Simon Sinek's TED Talk, Finding Your Why.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. And I think if you understand your own why, it will help you to understand your customer's why.
Yeah.
And I guess the other thing to say is that, today's consumers are very suspicious. For those of you that follow I love the Edelman Trust Barometer.
Yeah.
You'll know that trust is an absolute all-time low. So your value proposition really needs to be authentic, or you're going to get found out. So, for goodness sake, don't be accused of trust washing or woke washing. Your why and your value proposition must be authentic.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the way that you said the customer's why rather than the company's why, which I think is very important, because that's what they care about and that's why they've come to you. So once we've understood the why, and I'm now moving forward, I think, to like chapter 5, and we've defined our story, you then go on to describe applying insights to creating customer segments and personas, right? So we understand that. And specifically, and I think because this is a hot marketing topic, I wanted to bring this up. You talk about ABM, account-based marketing, and you say that you can do that on any budget with the right customer insight. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the days of spray and pray marketing, really are long gone. Mm-hmm. And, we can now use customer insights to identify our target audience. And we can do that from a segment of many, down to a segment of one. And this is often referred to as account-based marketing, or ABM for short. Mm-hmm. And companies are typically using ABM in one of 3 ways: one-to-one, one-to-many, and one-to-one, one-to-few, and one-to-many.
Yeah.
And there really is an ABM program for any budget. This is something that small companies can do right up to large companies. Mm-hmm. And I think if we sort of think about, okay, well, how does that actually work? I think we need to break down the segmentation journey into a number of steps. And then you can think about, well, what would be the sort of budget way of doing that step versus, having more money to do that step. Yeah. So I like to think of 5 steps. And the first step is researching your segment. And, you can, the low budget way of doing that is doing it yourself. You're doing desk-based research, you're speaking to people within the company, right up to obviously, spending money and getting some outside help to do that. So the first one is to researching your segment. And, don't dismiss actually talking to the salespeople and talking internally is a really important way of researching your segment. Mm-hmm. The second one is bringing your segments to life with personas. So these are real people in those segments. And, you can't, I'm trying to think of a good example here of, picky choosers. You might come up with this, wonderful definition, picky choosers, that's our segment. But how on earth do you go to a data company and say, can I have a list of all your picky choosers, please? Mm-hmm. It's, you should bring your segments to life with personas, but you've also got to be realistic about how you're then going to find those people.
Yeah.
So that's the second step. The third step is to select your target accounts. And again, you might speak to your salespeople, you might get some outside help to do that, again, depending on your budget. And then you want to find out how those accounts are behaving using intent data. Now, that probably is a more expensive choice. So having said that, there are a whole number of companies now who will help you interpret digital footprint data and understand how those accounts are behaving. And it's not necessarily expensive. You can do that for £1,000 a month, £1,500 a month. So that's the fourth step is, find out how your accounts are behaving using that digital intent data. And finally, and this is the area where, of course, you can spend a little or a lot, is target them with relevant digital advertising and serve up relevant content. So, that's where, you can spend a lot of money on digital advertising, or you could be reaching them, you could be targeting them through an email campaign or a telemarketing campaign. So digital advertising is going to be more expensive, but there's other ways of reaching them. So I think you have to think of those 5 steps and then apply your budget accordingly.
That's fantastic. And I know that we're trying to just keep a short, a dip into your book for each of these episodes. I could talk to you about those particular subjects for a while. So I'm going to end it there, and we'll join you again next week, Christine, for Insights and Customers. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you.
I'll speak to you then. Thank you, Christine. Some practical tips there to get us started, whatever your budget. And I will, of course, include links to Christine, her company, the book, Twitter, and LinkedIn in the show notes. Next up, we enter the world of marketing technology, as we often do on this show, and welcome Xenia Muntean, the founder of Planable, a content review and marketing collaboration platform used by over 5,000 teams at brands like Jaguar, Land Rover, Viber, Siemens, and the United Nations. For the past 4 years, she has worked with hundreds of marketing teams, helping them collaborate efficiently from across the room or across the globe. Xenia was recognized as Forbes 30 Under 30, has spoken at the Cannes Lions, and has been a guest on Growth Marketing Today, Social Geek, Social Minds, and many other podcasts. As we'll discuss, she has also published an ebook, The Manifesto on Content Marketing Teams, and has recently launched her own podcast, People of Marketing. Welcome, Xenia. Hi, Xenia. Welcome to Rockstar CMO FM. How are you?
Good. Good morning. And thank you so much for having me on the show.
You're very welcome. And where are we talking to you from?
Bucharest, Romania, Eastern Europe. Yes, the land of
Bucharest.
Have you? That is wow. How so?
It's a beautiful city. Yeah. I used to work with. There's a lot of tech that happens in Bucharest and in Romania at the moment. So I've worked with outsourced development team there when I worked in an agency. Very beautiful city. But for people that don't know you and probably don't know Bucharest, tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Planable, which is a collaboration platform, collaboration tool for social media teams out there, for modern social media teams that want to move fast with their content production. And before Planable, I had a social media marketing agency. So I was in the industry and in the ad world since I graduated university. And even before that, I was obsessed with advertising. Since I was very, very young, I was reading everything I could get my hands on. All the books, Ogilvy, all of that good stuff. And I was dreaming, of, sometimes having my own shop in the, potentially an agency, a digital marketing agency. And that happened very early on during my second year of university. And that's, how I, building and running my own agency. That's when I stumbled upon a bunch of problems, as it usually happens. And I decided to solve one of them by building Planable together with my co-founders. So that's the story of me. I'm born in Republic of Moldova, which is a post-Soviet country in Eastern Europe, and have been building Planable for the past 4 years.
Very good, very good. And we're talking to each other on video, but I don't share the video in the podcast. It's audio only. But as you can see behind me, I am also inspired by marketing books. So it's always good to meet somebody who has that same passion. And so it was the problems you found running the agency that inspired you to start Planable. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Kind of like trying to scratch my own itch. They say, best entrepreneurs, build companies to solve their own problems, because then your ideal user, your audience, as good as it can get. I built Planable to solve this specific problem that frustrated me the most, which was the entire operational and collaboration thing that was happening beside planning content for social. And that's what we've been doing. We've been helping, other agencies and marketing teams out there to move faster in terms of planning social media content.
No, so that's what Planable does. Is it focuses on planning and collaborating on publishing social content. Is that correct?
Yes. So what it does is that it replaces a bunch of tools that currently social media teams use out there. And most specifically, social media teams use spreadsheets to plan what's called in the industry editorial calendars. for the next month. They use Drive or Dropbox to store their files, like the GIFs and the videos and the images and all of that. Email to discuss and align around content, or Slack, if it's internally. And we replace all of those tools by just bringing the social media team in one single place where they can align, where they can see how their content is going to look like, pixel perfect to the final version on social. And they can just have, everything in one single place, so they can coordinate the entire production and their entire social media output from one central location.
That sounds fantastic. And I think any of us that have worked in agencies are aware of that. Email, spreadsheet, shared drives,
client approvals, trying to centralize all the feedback from clients. I've been there. It was a mess. I was a mess. So,
all right. And here on Rockstar CMO, we often talk about content marketing, and this is part of that. And I also noticed that you'd recently published the Manifesto on Content Marketing Themes. Yeah, tell us a bit about that. What inspired you to write that ebook?
Oh, God, I felt like, working with brands and agencies out there in the past 4 years since I started building Planable, I felt that there's not that many people that are raising the issue of operations and processes behind content. And I understand why. It's not a sexy subject. It's definitely not the most glamorous topic. You can talk about processes and operations. Who wants to talk about that? We want to talk about the words and creativity and strategies and trends. That's the sexy stuff. And I felt like someone needed to raise their hand and say, look, we gotta, we got to get our shit together, and we got to organize ourselves a little better, because, it's 2020. It was 2019 when I started, when I published the book. And we deserve just better ways of working together. And the entire manifesto was about the 3 principles that we have to build within our team. And that's clarity, coordination, and efficiency. And those are the 3 values and principles you have to figure out how to build inside your team in order to be fully productive and efficient, and, to be a modern social media team or content marketing.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, because recently, in the last couple of weeks, I have Robert Rose on the show on a regular basis, who's my content marketing guru anyway. And a lot of the conversation around content marketing is turning into that. It's turning into that conversation about content operations and how we do that. I mean, everybody wants to talk about the sexy stuff. They love talking about the creative and the words and the copy, but how do you actually make that happen? Right. And I noticed in your manifesto, I love this thing that you focus on, and that is content paralysis. What did you mean by that?
Yes. So the demand of content has, it has increased so much in the past few years. And I think we've seen this particularly well during the lockdown and the pandemic. The audience had this huge demand for content from brands. They needed information, and they needed advice, and they needed meaningful information around what is happening in the world, but also entertainment. So there was this huge hunger for content that, we experienced in the early days of the pandemic. And brands weren't prepared to accommodate that need, because because basically everything, the bottleneck was how the content was being produced, and the operations were becoming a bottleneck, because we didn't have the structure and the right framework to work together as teams. We couldn't produce content in an agile and fast way. So that meant we had this content paralysis, where we had to, we couldn't basically accommodate the demand on the market. And we've really, I wrote this book in 2019 before the pandemic. And I kind of, I mentioned that we're going to get many brands are going to get to that point in time where they're going to experience this content paralysis, just the insufficiency of time because of the way we're working. And I think, many brands during the lockdown have experienced this paralysis in terms of not being able to move as fast as they needed, just because the operational side wasn't there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was a trend that was already happening. And I think it's interesting you wrote this in 2019, because people are talking about the fact that actually more sales is now virtual and more is happening in terms of engagement with brands. Before, I work mainly in B2B, before anybody actually speaks to a sales rep or engages with the product or engages with you and your people, that now much of selling is now happening virtually and people are consuming much more content ahead of that. Is that what you're talking about? Is that trend was already happening before the pandemic and that's now accelerated?
Yeah, 100%. This, we've seen that happening before the pandemic, but now I think and even the conversations, not just the trend of consuming more and more content, but also the conversations around how can we make it happen in terms of processes and methodology? How can we make content as marketers happen, faster? I think this particular conversation that I was so eager to raise, that has accelerated as well, fortunately. And I think it's where I wished it was in the next 5 years. I think we're now there just because of the pandemic. So, small good things that came with this as well. In the grand scheme of things, that's probably not, that big, but it's an important thing. And I'm glad that marketers are looking at it in the end and trying to figure out how can they optimize and how can they increase their productivity as a team.
And I think it's been I think the important thing for marketers and for the content marketers that have been banging this drum for 5-10 years or so is that actually it's now been taken more seriously further up the business in the C-suite. Exactly. And you talk about in the ebook, you as a way of getting over this, you talk about coordination and efficiency. Now, aside from using Planable, obviously, what advice do you give to marketing teams who are looking to do that, who are looking to break that paralysis?
I love this question. And I think, there is no success recipe for this particular thing, but taking this extremely seriously and making this a mission for your team, either, the end, we're saying, the end of the year. So a lot of teams are planning for 2021, annual strategies and all of that. So making productivity for your content studio, for your content team, making productivity one of your objectives, one of your key results, if you're working in an OKR type of thing, or if you're working in different methodologies, it doesn't matter what type of, methodology you're using, but basically making productivity for your content team one of your key results, one of your objectives for the year, and setting that as a goal is the most important first step that you can do, because from that derives a lot of other tasks, like, potentially auditing what's not working at the moment, finding, investigating where that particular bottleneck in your team is, is it the fact that information is not centralized in one single place? Is it the organization of your content? Is the fact that people don't have, everyone in the team doesn't have access or overview to the content? Is the content not visual enough or clear enough? What is, what else is happening? Is double work happening? All of those things. Once you look into them, you're going to find the specific, particular problem that your team is, dealing with. But it all comes from making that a goal for 2021 and, setting a few projects aside for that. Because that's, where it starts. If you decide and if you commit to making, to improving productivity for your content team, I think that's, that's the first best step you can make.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're talking about there, it's all sorts of things, isn't it? It's not just about technology and enabling people to collaborate online. It's also about process and people and the very structure of your marketing teams, by the sounds of things.
Yes, 100% too. I was just speaking with someone earlier on my own podcast, People of Marketing, and I asked them, what's the one thing that sits between them and their productivity? And they mentioned that it's understanding of all the stakeholders' needs on social media, and also educating them. So being mindful of all the departments that need to interact with social and finding ways of properly and seamlessly getting them involved in the social media planning and the social media strategy is a very important thing to do, because social is probably one of those departments that is and content generally is one of the departments that is extremely connected with everything else in the business, with HR, with legal, with product, with sales, with everything out there. Everyone in the company needs content in order to, operate. So being, mindful of who the stakeholders are and their needs and their point of view on social, that is one big thing. So it's, it's not just the technology that you're using. Obviously, that is important as a technology provider. I have to say that. But it's beyond that, above and beyond technology. It's mindset, it's stakeholders. Who do you need to involve and how can you involve them properly? It's, about the role, everyone, the team, the design of the team. How do you collaborate efficiently as a team? So it's, a lot more than just technology.
Yeah. And we've touched on this already, but, what differences have you seen in the way that your clients are working during the pandemic with your tools specifically, or what demands are they making? Is it just that people are producing more? They're getting over that paralysis and doing more with your product now?
I was amazed of the difference I saw in our clients using Planable. If before the pandemic they were, very active on the platform, once the lockdown was, in place and once everyone was working from home, we've seen, an increase in activity. Everyone, people were, using it more than ever, more than before. And not just in terms of producing more posts, producing more content, but also more people were on the platform. And I think it makes sense if before, they were using Planable, but also potentially communicating just from across the table or from across the hall. Now they had no other choice than just to use the platform and communicate it on, in one single place. And I think that that is, in my opinion, a better approach, because you have everything in one single place. You're not missing any comments. You're not going to forget any feedback that you ever received. So it's all centralized. It's all accountable. It's all in one place. But yes, that's the difference. Then we've seen, more people getting involved in the planning process, and also more content being produced.
I think it's really, there's two things I find interesting about that, because I come from an age of on-premise software, and I love it when I talk to cloud providers and the data that they get from their users, where they can see these trends happening and they can see changes in consumption. And I think it's been really interesting during the pandemic. I spoke to a cloud CMS vendor quite a few weeks ago on this podcast, and he was talking about the difference he'd seen in the way that his users are working. And the second point, of course, is that we're now learning to work virtually, right? We're now learning to leverage these tools much better, because we are, and also what does that mean for the world of work, in that we now can spread our teams around more, but still remain working in that way with these tools. So I think that's fascinating.
I agree. It's a new world. It's a new future.
It is indeed. Well, I know that you're an incredibly busy entrepreneur, so I'm gonna come to my final question, and you might be familiar with this question because we ask it of all of our guests. We have a regular feature on Rockstar CMO called the Swimming Pool, our portal to hell for all the BS, snake oil, and all that's wrong with marketing. This industry we love. What would you throw into our Rockstar CMO swimming pool?
I would honestly throw social as a concept. And that's social.
I love this.
It's, the fact that social is, a lot of people talking about social as this a different thing, right? But social is, in the end, a channel. It is a channel. And it needs, the core of social is content. You can't do social without a meaningful, powerful content strategy, very well connected to your brand. So social is not this whole, new beast. It is, part of the content mix. And it's, it's a distribution channel in the end. And a lot of people are talking about, let's do something, let's do social. Let's, put this on social. But it is, it's a channel. So you can't do social media strategy if you don't have content in the first place that is connected with the brand, with the business goals, You can't do that without content. So
and without something to say that somebody cares about, right? I mean, like you say, you're not going to suddenly magic up engagement just because you're on social.
Exactly.
So,
yes.
Yeah. I've had similar, because it's interesting, because I've had marketing technologists want to throw in technology into the swimming pool, and I've had PR people, and I've had a PR person say that phrase, "Can we get PR on this?" thrown into the swimming pool as well.
Can we get the full control? Yes.
Very similar. So it's a similar thing where people are actually not thinking about the thing they're trying to do. They're thinking about the tactic, and they think that'll improve engagement and stuff. That's really interesting.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. And very much enjoyed our conversation, Xenia. And when people spin the dial on the interwebs, where are they going to find you? You talked about you're on Twitter, correct?
Yes, I'm on Twitter and on LinkedIn. So if you want to connect with me, you can, send me a connection request on LinkedIn. Let me know you heard me on this podcast. And I would be more than happy to chat with you.
And Planable, where can people find that?
Yes, it's planable.io, planable.io.
And then you mentioned a podcast as well.
Yes,
so
we're on,
is that on the Planable?
Yeah, we're on every podcast app out there. Spotify, Stitcher, all of those things, and it's called People of Marketing. So whenever
people of marketing, that's
yes.
Well, I shall of course include all the links to those things in the show notes. It's been a great pleasure to speak to you. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hope we speak soon.
Thank you so much. It was really great chatting with you.
Thank you, Xenia. I suspect we'll be revisiting her suggestion to chuck "Let's Get Some Social on That" into the Rockstar CMO swimming pool in a future issue. A great suggestion. Right, it's Friday evening here at the London Rockstar Penthouse. Time to wind down for the weekend. And what better way than to join my friend and content marketing mentor, Robert Rose, in the Rockstar CMO virtual bar. Good evening, Robert. What are you drinking?
Oh, hello, my friend. How are you? I'm so glad to see you in the bar. This week again, for I guess it was a few weeks ago, I think you're actually going to have the element of the drink that we're having tonight. I'm calling this drink tonight the Fall Martini, which is, now hold on to your horses here. It's gin.
I've heard of that.
You might have some of that. Now, specifically, it's tulip gin from the Netherlands, which I have talked about on this show before. I got a gift from my friends my Dutch friends from Amsterdam, who gave me some wonderful tulip gin, which was beautiful and makes a wonderful martini. And then the key here is the form of vermouth that you use, which is, of course, in this case, is an Italian red vermouth, which gives it wonderful fall-like color. And it's just a beautiful, wonderful martini.
It sounds lovely. A
sweet martini.
That sounds very nice. Now, I will attempt to make it based on the ingredients I have on my desk, as we usually do. Now then, in a martini, you're not putting ice, are you?
No, there's no ice here. It is shaken, not stirred.
Well, I've wandered off piste already in that case then. But obviously I do have some gin. And I have, even though these people have not got in touch with me yet, I'm still only drinking Hendrick's gin for the pleasure of it, by the way. A bottle of Hendrick's gin. Nice. So I shall pour some of that into my glass. A decent slug, martini-esque. Oh, that's a bit too much gin. Do you mind if I just... I don't have any vermouth on my desk, unfortunately. But I do have something very close to it. Not from Italy. Tonic water.
Well, that's not vermouth, but I think you should do that.
I can't make the case. I don't know what tonic has got in common with vermouth. I don't think we can even make a reference to botanicals there. And it didn't fizz when I opened it, which is annoying. But anyway, let's pour some of that in there. Just a touch. So I got a very ginny gin and tonic. Let's give that a try.
Very ginny gin and tonic. Yes. There you go.
Corky Bennett. Whew, that's maybe should have put a bit more tonic into that one. But yes, that's very nice. I can imagine us sipping these for a while. In fact, we have had martinis before. I think we had them in New York. Where we will be having these ones, Robert?
Well, where shall we go in the world? I think here, since we are in the depth of fall and approaching winter, we should probably go somewhere that is very holiday-esque, I would think.
Nice.
And I don't know, have you ever been to, Stockholm?
Yes.
And seen the Christmas market or the Christmas fair that they do there?
Yeah.
It is.
I don't know if I've been to the Stockholm Christmas fair, but I've spent a lot of time in places like Germany at their Christmas fairs and stuff, and I think that those places are just...
It's a similar thing, yes. But
I've spent a lot of time in Stockholm. It's a wonderful city.
Yes, and aside from the, look, I can't abide too much of the Swedish cuisine. I'm just not. I can't. My apologies to all of my Swedish friends. I just, it just doesn't do it for me. So we'd find some other kind of restaurant to be at near the Christmas square in Stockholm, and take a nice, lovely walk through it. I think after dinner.
Nice.
And we would find this lovely, this lovely martini as our accompaniment.
Yeah, and there's some great hotels and stuff as well. Great bars in Stockholm. I mean, we would definitely enjoy that city on these cocktails.
It's a beautiful, wonderful. It's one of my favorite places. I love Stockholm. And if you go in this time of year where it is, perennially dark, the time to go out is when it's all lit up at night, and so you get the wonderful Christmas lights and all.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. I think actually the last trips I did before we were not flying anymore, I was in the Nordics, around all those cities. So very nice indeed. And so the wonderful city of Stockholm is our host, and we are sharing these beautiful martinis. What are we going to be chatting about?
I think we need to start talking about career laddering for content marketing professionals. It is woefully behind. I'm working with a very large organization now that is building a content team in-house. And quite frankly, their HR people are really, really struggling because it just doesn't exist.
Right.
If you look up content marketing and career laddering, you're not going to find much. There's nothing there, because what typically happens is you've got people who are brought in as content marketing professionals, and they're coming in from all manner of places, right? They're journalists, they're editors, they're digital marketers, digital natives, salespeople, so many different, they come from so many different practitioners and so but the interesting thing is that once they get in, and many businesses have done this, right? You've got content managers and directors of content marketing, and even senior directors of content marketing, and, et cetera. But as you go higher in the organization, at some point there's a ceiling, right? Yeah. Very few organizations that we've seen have, VP level content marketing or content strategists. Very few. And those that do, once you go there, then that's the absolute ceiling.
Yeah.
There's no,
absolutely.
There's no matriculating up to anything other than that, because, and in most businesses, once you get beyond the manager level, you're getting out of content marketing and you're going into something else, right? Either product marketing, you're going into brand, you're going into IT in some cases, you're going into technical writing. There's no, so what's happening is, interestingly, is I've, having done this for the last 10 years and watched so many colleagues that started out, as junior level people at either interns or coordinators or junior level managers, and who have now over the last 10 years grown from company to company to company and are now, at a good senior level place in their career. They're just changing companies.
Yeah.
And so there's a real talent gap here at the leadership level. Yeah. And if we ever want content marketing to actually be a strategic C-level strategy, there needs to be a voice at that table.
For sure.
And if that voice gets subsumed into product marketing or brand marketing or agencies, you're never going to get that level of voice at the senior leadership. And so thus the strategy sort of always remains a small niche tactic that the business kind of does off on the side. And it's and there's plenty of data, by the way. There's plenty of data, right? The World Economic Forum, I talked about this a little bit on Joe and my podcast.
I was going to mention that. Yeah.
World Economic Forum said that basically content job opportunities in marketing are going to be the second highest number of job opportunities, second only to healthcare. And that's an amazing statistic.
Yeah.
And then when you couple that with the number of businesses these days that are starting to in-house content and content strategy, the future looks bright for jobs, but where are they going? And
I think this is a really interesting topic because I've been working with a client who's grappling this very same thing. I think it would ruin it if we rehearsed it, but actually in this case, this is true again this week. And do you know what they did? They were looking at marketing models from all the top, wherever they could grab them, people like Serious Decisions and Forrester and stuff like that. And there isn't that definition. No, exactly. So there's these senior leaders that are looking at their influencers and the analysts and stuff, and they're not seeing that in their classic marketing models.
Right.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate. They don't exist. Those ladderings don't exist. The marketing ladders exist, right? You've got your coordinator, your manager, your senior manager, your director, your senior director, your VP, your CMO, and away you go. And there's your laddering, and it's got, average pay scales. It's got job descriptions. It's very clear.
Yeah.
And, so anyway, it's something I'm working on, right? Because, shame on me. I've not done it. I've not built one to sort of put out as a straw man. So let's put one out and let's start, if a standard doesn't exist, let's build one.
Yeah. And also, I think if you can indicate how that fits in with the rest of the marketing machine, and I think that's also the issue. Like, I think that maybe in content marketing, it's been a little bit siloed in terms of, we need to talk about content, we need to talk about content marketing, but how is that going to interact and interface with everything else? And if we can create those models for the leaders, then that will help them figure this out, right?
Yeah, it's a great point. It needs to, zipper into the rest of the marketing organization. Which, by the way, isn't always an assumed level either, right? There are many businesses out there who don't really have a great career laddering for marketing, full stop, right? Much less fun for content marketing.
I think it's interesting because
there are companies that you and I have both worked with that have yet to sort of join up digital and regular marketing, right? Where they've got a VP of digital marketing and a VP of regular marketing, I guess, or whatever you're calling it. But but they're sort of split out this whole department of digital marketing. It's like, really, what are the other people doing? You know what I mean?
They're not doing events. That's what they're not doing.
Right.
I think it's so true. And if I think about my own career, we've worked together for many years, and I've been a passionate advocate of content marketing, and I've run content marketing teams. But also, I think that when I look back at how I became a CMO, it was not because I was a content marketer. It was because I had that experience in working for software vendors in different capacities. So that really resonates with my own experience. That you're right. There isn't a career for a content marketer from the people that create the content all the way up to the CMO at the moment.
No, and the question is CMO the penultimate destination for a content marketer? And there's lots of discussion these days about whether whether the CMO job is too big, ostensibly for any one person. And you and I have talked about this before, and we're both saying, no, there's room for the CMO, as there's room for a CFO and a CEO. That's not too big for the organization. So thus, but in that level below, where you've got, everything from, content to media to PR and communications to brand to product marketing to, all of the different areas of marketing that need to be filled with senior level people, I do think there may be something there. And, and so it is, maybe CMO is the penultimate, in an ideal organization, but for that organization that has, there are plenty of organizations that have, for example, a CMO and a CCO, right? Where you've got a chief marketing officer and a chief customer officer. Or a chief growth officer or a chief digital officer, and depending on your business strategy, and the size of your business, it might merit exactly that. I would posit that a chief content officer could be just as important.
Wow. I think that's really interesting. And I know that, interestingly, and this is real for our listeners, we've both got a meeting to go to, so we shouldn't be sitting here in the bar anymore. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to draw a line under this excellent conversation, which I could definitely have for the rest of the evening and with some more of these cocktails. So where can people find a little bit more about your writing, Robert?
You can find me at contentadvisory.net if you're looking for me on the interwebs.
Splendid. And what did we describe? What was the aspiration for our social media? We discussed a couple of weeks ago to be ubiquitous across social media. Where can people find you?
You can find my annoyingly pervasive self at Robert_Rose on Twitter. And of course, I am also annoyingly pervasive on LinkedIn as well.
Splendid. Well, I will look forward to your annoyingly pervasive presence in this very bar, hopefully next week.
You will indeed.
Splendid. I'll see you then. Thank you, Robert.
Of course.
Cheers, mate. Bye-bye. Thank you, Robert. I'd love to know what you think of the topic of careers in content marketing, as many of you are content marketers, and it's a popular topic on this show. So that's a wrap on episode 39 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. Thanks again to Christine for sharing her insights, to Xenia for the wonderful conversation, and of course to Robert for propping up our virtual Rockstar CMO bar. I will of course include all their links in the show notes at rockstarcmo.com/podcast, where you can find all our previous episodes. If you like my guests, please give them a mention, click their links, follow them, take a look at their work. I really appreciate their time. But most of all, thank you for dropping a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track, and jiving along with us. I hope you enjoyed this show. Next week, we will have episode 3 of our dip into Christine's book. I have a chat scheduled with a wonderful marketing leader, Jeff Clark, who I've had the pleasure of working with and was recently principal analyst at Serious Decisions Forrester. And it will be my pleasure to welcome Robert Rose back to the Rockstar CMO virtual bar. Until then, I've been your host, Ian Truscott, founding editor at rockstarcmo.com, and I hope you'll join us next week here at Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Christy Heiler hosts a fantastic podcast called Own It. Christy, Tell us more about the show.
Own It is all about celebrating women and non-binary advertising agency owners. We talk about buying out of the Boys Club of Advertising because less than 1% of ad agencies are owned by women.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find the podcast at untilyouownit.com. We're also on the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net. And of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.